Hello, respected viewers. It's George Myland. So, welcome back to my channel. I got the joyous tidings at 10 o'clock yesterday morning that I was a candidate to be Chancellor of Oxford University. So, I filled in the form a few weeks ago, sent them off, and I couldn't quite believe it was quite that straightforward. I thought I'd have to get signatures to be nominated by people, but no, because when I looked into standing to be Professor of Poetry, also an elected post, one needs to be nominated by a requisite number of Oxonians. But in this, you don't. Anybody can stand. Anybody in the world, seems to me. No citizenship required, no residency requirement. No, you do not need to be a graduate of Oxford University or anywhere else. So the entire sort of 9 billion people of the world have the right to stand, but 38 have nominated. And I thought they'd weed it down. I thought this will be an establishment stitch up. They'll remove anybody who's not like a toady or total conformist. But to my overwhelming and pleasant surprise, they seem to have be taken on all comers. So that's great. So 38 candidates, and I wasn't to reveal it till 10 o'clock this morning. They gave us 24 hours notice, I suppose, so it wouldn't come as too much of the shock to the system if you found out from the media first of all. So yes, journalists, thank you. Get in touch. Anyway, so I should be Chancellor of Oxford University because I'm the only one who's willing to commit to actually live in Oxford and make that my sole residence. Okay, most chancellors, they live in London, like Lord Patton or the late Lord Jenkins, go to Oxford a few times a year. No, 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 no. They're doing a half-assed job. They're not actually committed, whereas I am. I would still want to be to fly around the world to as many countries as possible to fly the flag. So I have my policies. I know the Chancellor is largely symbolic. It does not is not a plenipotentiary. Would it were that I would have dictatorial powers? But these are my policies I want to encourage. And it's really by persuasion or even cajolement that the Chancellor can exercise any sway. He, or it could be she in future, is not entitled to order people to do this or to refrain from doing that. So my policy would be to have a better university, but a smaller university. It's already overexpanded, had 16,000 people when I went up a quarter of a century ago, now got 26,000 students. You know, you go back before the war, it was 4,000. Now, of course, that's too small. So big is not always beautiful. So, and another thing is so quality rather than quantity. Save the green spaces. I would rather knock down some of these hideous ferroconcrete monstrosities, these gruesome carbuncles, and have more green space and playing fields in the city centre. So we don't want over expansion. I know it's a mostly postgraduate university now, sort of 54% postgraduate. I don't want it to get more and more because it just the undergraduates are completely squeezed out. Oxford is an international university, always has been, and I welcome that cosmopolitanism. It's a good thing that it's a multi-ethnic, multi-religious university. So I would say students of all nationalities are absolutely welcome. Chinese students are very, very welcome. The Chinese government is not. We mustn't have our academic integrity or human rights compromised by accepting funding from companies which are linked to the Chinese regime and carrying out genocide against the Uyghurs. Another thing is I'm absolutely anti-woke. If you don't like Oxford University in the names, don't come there. Go somewhere else. There are thousands of other universities you can go to. Cecil Rhodes' statue, is that unacceptable to you? Fine, you're not required to go there. So there's so no snowflakery from left or right. Rhodes stands tall. Rhodes must not fall. All right. He was a massive funder of the university. He did some good things. He did some bad things. All right. You can't judge someone who was born in the 1850s by the standards of the 21st century. How will your morals stack up in 150 years' time? They're things that we haven't even considered, which may one day be considered grossly unethical. So no, he was a man of his time. He is vital to the history of Oxford University, Zimbabwe, Zambia, South Africa, and so on. So without him, there would be no education in Zimbabwe whatsoever. So he did an enormous boon to Zimbabwe, and it came as a cost. And some people got killed in that Chimurenga as well. So recognize him as a flawed character. It really is preposterous to say because someone doesn't conform to all the mores of our own epoch that his or her image or name must not be displayed. So every king, every queen, every prime minister, every colonial governor, there has to be the complete erasure of their names. No, we're not going to efface everything before our own time. You know, same-sex marriage wasn't allowed till David Cameron, which therefore means every prime minister before that was grossly discriminatory. This really is preposterous. Grow up and get over yourself. I realized that funding is a major headache. Do all I could to raise funding whilst being ethical. And I realized dons are not paid enough. It's simply not enough. There are many outstanding dons and their salaries are nothing short of scandalous. and so hugely value the enormously effective work that they do. And they shouldn't be subjected to all sorts of unduly strenuous regulations and harassed and not allowed to do this, that, or say that. So I want to bring back genuine free speech amongst undergraduates, postgraduates, and indeed the dons. There's too much of a brain drain with people leaving the United States or going into other higher paid occupations like accountancy. All right, academia never was fabulously paid, but it shouldn't be appallingly paid. And Oxford's an increasingly expensive city. So really try to improve life in that regard. And to just get away with this puritanism and allow people to interact the way they want. Okay, sexual harassment is a problem, but the definition that has been unduly broadened to looking at someone, to sending a card, to whistling, or whatever, to paying somebody a compliment, and it's preposterous, the overreaction, the micromanagement of every possible interaction. And that's why people need to develop a bit of tolerance, which means putting up with behavior that you don't like. That's what the meaning is. And if you can't accept that, go back to the nursery. So it's ridiculous the way we've overreacted to something which is really a trifling. So we're a bit too worried about safety and not worried enough about freedom. That's what's really under attack in Oxford these days. I've got all sorts of ideas. And the colleges charge a little £3 for tourists to enter. They should charge way more. Yeah, so that's it. I mean, although, yes, Oxford is very international, in a sense, I think the postgraduate fees should be even higher. Okay, because home undergraduates are a loss-making proposition of the university, only £9,250 a year. I mean, I know that's high enough, but the real cost of educating undergraduates, especially in the sciences, is at least double that. So if the university is not going to allow them to raise the fees, they're just going to have to get more money from people where the fees are uncapped. Yeah, all sorts of other ideas. No more racist discrimination, no more class discrimination on who they accept. And what a Don told me the other day, better not identify as subject or college, that there are some tutors who will say, if you're an Etonian, we don't matter how distinguished you are, how magnificent, brainy, we're not taking you. And that is class warfare. So no more bigotry. That is grossly unfair. Okay, so Oxford really is the most marvelous university in the world, but it doesn't have the funding it needs to compete. And I'm afraid, because of a lot of ignorance and prejudice from politicians of all parties, the situation is getting worse. So we have to take some drastic measures to try and rectify the situation. So please vote for me. I'll also speak up for Palestine. Okay, free Palestine, end the illegal occupation, end the massacre of Palestinian civilians. There's been a systematic destruction of the school system in Palestine, hundreds of thousands of children without any education. So any educationalist should be deeply troubled about this, to say the very least. And also speak up frankly for pro-life policies. Not sure what I can do, just say that abortion is unacceptable unless to save the mother's life. Right, thank you for watching my video. Make sure you subscribe on Patreon, donate on PayPal, georgecallaghan79@gmail.com. And if you're an Oxford graduate, make sure you vote for me. Right, thank you very much. Goodbye.